Welcome, adventurers, to Breakbattleroll Presents On Tap, where the dice are always rolling, the stories ever flowing, and the drinks are as strong as our bonds. Your barkeep, Aaron Rollins, here, as well as our host, Ben Holland, along with some of our favorite tavern patrons, ready to serve up a frothy mix of tabletop tales and tips with a splash of humor and a twist of your favorite bar banter. Whether you're a seasoned dungeon chug master or a newbie that's only started wetting their whistle, there's always a seat for you at the bar. From ale-raising adventures to mead-worthy moments, we promise a beautiful blend of fantasy and fun. And now here is your host, Ben Holland.
Hello, patrons. I am your host, Ben Holland. Welcome to Break, Battle, and Roll Presents On Tap. And our very first episode, no less. Everybody.
Celebratory chitin noises.
I'm uncomfortable right away. So before we do introductions of the people making the noises, what are we doing here? I know this is different. We're not actually playing D&D. We're here because we just really enjoy each other's company and talking to you. We realized that during our Song of Rests that we really enjoyed the opportunity to kind of open up on our D&D games, how we play our games, how we prep for games, talk to other creators about what they do. And this gives us the opportunity to do just that. So sit back for some fun, casual conversation. We want you to be involved as well. There are ways for you to send us questions for us to talk about on our Instagram or on our Facebook. And we'd love to hear from you also. But let's introduce our patrons. Starting on he could be on my left or right. I really don't know. Mr. Chad Stafford.
Hello, howdy, hey. Can't wait for our first episode. This is exciting.
And I'm going to say she's on my right, Miss Janelle Wilke.
Hi there, and also known as Anonymous Kangaroo. Looking at my document, it automatically assigned me an animal, so that's my persona for this evening.
Am I an animal in here?
You're Anonymous Hedgehog, and I'm so jealous.
Yes.
I'm Anonymous Hedgehog.
What?
Gotta go fast.
That's adorable.
Chad is Anonymous Cheetah. You're Anonymous Hedgehog, but Janelle, you're now Anonymous Moose.
Oh.
You're no longer Anonymous Kangaroo, for at least on my screen. And then the bartender's voice that you hear, by the way, Aaron Rollins, who does not have to do his big booming barkeep tonight or a million other voices.
And I'm not sitting because I'm standing behind the bar pouring these drinks that people are drinking from the tap. Yeah. What are you drinking, Chad?
Yeah. Bar puns. Yeah, Chad, what are you drinking?
What am I drinking? Oh, shoot. What am I drinking? You know what's funny? That's the only thing I didn't prepare for. Let's see here. You know, I enjoy a good mule. Let's start with that. I'll go with a mule.
Okay. All right, we're going to insert some drink-making sound effects right here where I'm mixing something up in a little copper cup. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Janelle?
Oh, I'd love a frothy pumpkin chai, please. That just sounds perfect right now.
Will you settle with Prumpkin? I've only got Prumpkins back here.
I suppose I must, yes.
All right.
Please.
You can chew the candy seeds. It's great. Here you go. Ben?
All right, so I'm actually going to tell you what I'm really drinking because it's awesome. I don't actually drink. So the other day when I was in the store, I was looking for a new electrolyte mix after when I just work out, which I just did about an hour ago. And I found this hydration mix that's just mainly electrolytes, but it's flavored like the firecracker popsicles.
Oh my gosh.
It's actually they partnered with Popsicle to make it. It is absolutely fantastic. It's mostly vitamins and electrolytes and stuff like that, but it tastes like a firecracker popsicle. It's delicious. I have a bottle of water with that in it.
Well, I probably can't make one of those, but I bet I could make you some kind of custom crafted concoction.
I would love a custom crafted concoction. Well, so the reason that we're here today is to talk about DMing. So we have three of us. Aaron, probably the longest and most experienced DM, and then Chad and I, who've come up to it in the last handful of years. And then Janelle, who hasn't DM'd her game yet, but has been playing a lot with us and definitely wanted to get her point of view on some of these questions as well. So the question of the day, the custom concoction of the day is, what kind of DM are you? And so I think I'm going to start with our elder statesman here, the forever GM.
Elder statesman.
The ancient one.
I'm pretty sure I'm the oldest, but he's the forever GM.
You are the oldest, but I am wiser in the ways of DM. And I'm just kidding.
No, I love this. I don't want you to continue with that. So, Aaron, what kind of DM are you?
Oh, that is a loaded question because it's like what defines different DMs. I would say that to start with my style, I am a DM that is all about theater of the mind, which I think translates really well to a podcast. So I think that DMing has been something in my life that has brought people together. So if there was any reason to become a DM, it was to give everyone an excuse to come hang out and play in a game and make sure that everyone is having the best time possible, but without making the game too easy, too like carefree. You know, I know that there's a lot of DMs out there that would never kill off a character, or really like they tend to give their players like every avenue out of a situation. I'm the kind of DM that will help, but will definitely hinder when I need to.
If you're making too much progress, he'll throw a river in your way.
Or a snake rope. Or a rope snake.
I also would say I'm an honest DM. There's not a whole lot of fudging rolls because I want the dice to tell the story, even if the dice are absolutely kicking the shit out of the players, or if the dice are kicking the crap out of me, like the gargantuan situation. So
I knew it.
So I will attest to this honesty of Aaron's, and he won't retaliate if for some reason your broken character that he let me play in his Tomb of Annihilation game ruins full encounters for him, because that's happened. And like he had a night where, what was the name? Was it Froghemoth?
yeah, it was a Froghemoth.
Yeah, and it was supposed to drown everybody, and I think I killed it in 2 turns, and it was bad. And I expected like one of these weeks he's just gonna kill me. I'm gonna feel it, and then he's gonna send me a text of a picture of a frog or something like that afterwards, and that's just what it's gonna be. But no, very very honest, straightforward DM. It's fun.
Frog just like gesturing like a throat cut across its neck.
You're the one who's gonna croak tonight.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think what Aaron said, he started it off, was really good, because he said he is definitely a theater of the mind DM, which is an excellent segue into Chad. What kind of DM are you?
Oh boy, oh howdy, oh hey.
Like Aaron, I had a hard time figuring out how I wanted to answer this question, so I had to sit for a moment and at least get some of my thoughts down. I think what I could use to describe the way that I tackle being a DM is kind of like coming from a background of art and animation. I try to create like a visual aspect of things, not just like from a narrative aspect, but like an inclusion of descriptive verbiage to help sell a mood or a feeling, or, and Ben's probably alluding to this point specifically, having some sort of visual representation of a key location or like an object on the actual table, something that's physical and tangible for my players. Because being a person who's like a visual storyteller, I like to have actual like visuals for people who might have a harder time doing that sort of theater of the mind thing, and having something that's concrete, at least in terms of like a specific. So for example, if there's like a big encounter for that session, I'll have something on the table that represents that space, that environment, that sort of feeling. And the other way that I like to DM is kind of character driven. So I really enjoy doing different voices, different accents. And so having these characters sort of fill out the world and having memorable NPCs that can interact or hinder, could be the bad guys or the good guys or somewhere in between, is always fun for me. So I think that's kind of like a broad stroke of my DMing style.
And if you guys ever follow Chad on social media, like you can
I'm about to say the same thing.
Oh man, yeah,
Yep.
you can see some of his wonderful set building that he does. It's so cool.
Like if you go to It's Chit Chat on Instagram, you can find plenty of amazing mini setups. Chad is not theater of the mind. He brings the theater to you. As someone who plays in Chad's games, as someone who's had messenger conversations back and forth of picking the best mini fog machine to put on the table.
Yeah, that's true. That is
Yep.
true. We did have that conversation.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, Chad, how many 3D printers do you own?
Oh, well, now just the one.
Okay.
But when you upgrade from an Elgu Mars to a Saturn, I think this one is like you don't really need much else. The print bed's enough for almost anything Dungeons and Dragons related. But if anybody does check out those posts, I try my best to link or tag like the places that those things come from, whether it's just like a local shop or if it's like from Amazon or if it happens to be an Etsy purchase. But if for whatever reason you see something on there, you're like, hey, where'd you get this? I will definitely answer it if my brain remembers where it came from, because I've been collecting these things for a couple years now and they're from all over the place.
There's some cool stuff on there. There's this this word doesn't do it justice, but there's a papercraft like town that Chad made, but papercraft is the worst word for it because it doesn't sell it, which is so incredibly cool.
It's insane how like just these little paper buildings can just add so much, and you can have a town of these things for a relatively low price. I'm literally going through my Amazon history right now so I can shout out the name of it. I believe they're just called Battle Systems, and they're a UK company.
I just found the post. The buildings were from Battle Systems Terrain, and they're built from papercraft, which was therapeutic pieced together. So Chad actually used it for therapy as well. That's why I use Legos for.
That is true.
You want to get together and build Legos one day?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
great.
I have so many sets that need to be built right now.
I just bought a new X-Wing. Janelle,
Yes, sir.
switching over to you. I know you haven't DM'd a game, but what would you think about DMing if you thought about putting together like a campaign of your own? What kind of DM do you think you'd be?
Well, since this is going to sound pretty much like similar to what we've already heard, because I'm also a very visual person. I'm a graphic designer. I think I wouldn't really invest a lot of time in doing mini figurines, but I would. Something that I was thinking about is that when I was younger, I loved making like a fake restaurant and then bringing people into a room that I like decorated and like set mood lighting and everything for, like, and I would do like fantasy themed restaurants and stuff. So it was pretty cool. So I would do like certain lighting. I have, for example, this like projector that does a starry night sky on the ceiling. So having something like that, having some music and ambiance in the background, like whether it's crickets if we're at night, or the ocean if we're nearby, like, you know, near like a seaport or anything like that. I think I would do some things like that.
Janelle is an immersion DM.
So, Janelle, why don't you start your game? Because I want to play in that.
I think that would be super fun. And of course, I would draw whenever I could. World building is very important. Theater of the mind is very important. But yeah, I want to immerse you in the play. I think I would also have fun with my players, like maybe setting up snacks that would be themed as well.
Heck yes, man.
I've done that.
That's
It's
so
fun.
fun.
Yeah, I have done that. It's fun. In fact, the game that I'm running right now with both Chad or Aaron are in, we have to return back to the main town and inn at some point pretty soon. And I am actually about to tell them I'm going to suggest that be a potluck day, because that makes sense. Like that
good
kind
idea.
of stuff is really fun. That's awesome.
Yeah, it just makes the hangout just extra enjoyable and fun.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. But I'm going to get to the hangout question in a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important. I'm going to answer as well, since I run a game. I think I lean more towards the theater of the mind, but I do have a lot of visual representations. We're going to talk about it in our tools. Kind of, I have a question about like what tools do you run to your sessions? But I run all my games at this point at Chad's house. Go to his Instagram. You'll see the table and you'll see why I run my games at Chad's house. But
Hashtag is a sponsor.
oh yeah, that is true. That is true. So we throw a TV in the center of the table, and I have a tool on my iPad that projects, and we'll talk about it, projects a battle map on the screen. And so we can still kind of have that minifigure-esque type of feel, but I don't have to own 10,000 minifigures. I want to.
Well, and
but
it's
I don't.
also because the campaign that you're currently running is very heavily a dungeon crawl. So
It
having
is,
even
yeah.
like a map or some sort of representation on screen for this labyrinthian maze that we find ourselves in is like so effective.
Yeah, because it would be too much for me to each week. Like, I own some battle maps, which I think are really cool that you can like draw on and stuff with Sharpies and erase. That would be hours of time to draw what I have going on right now. And so I sit firmly in the middle, but I like what Aaron said, like a very honest DM type of thing. I roll in front of everybody and they can actually see it on the screen. So think of D&D Beyond, but my tool actually allows me to roll the dice per monster and everyone just sees it, right? So if they roll a 1, they roll a 1. If they roll a 7, they roll a 7. Like, it just happens and everyone can see it. And so much to the point to where I go so far as have the tool set up to monsters can have randomized hit points, right? Because you roll dice for monsters' hit points. So not all monsters automatically walk out onto the stage with max hit points or with the max possible hit points. One might have 30, another one might have 11. And I think that that's really fun to kind of keep everyone guessing.
That's actually one of my favorite things that you do in our game.
Yeah. Because
you might kill one guy, but the exact same creature has like almost twice the hit points. You're like, wait a second, why is this one not going down? So,
He drank milk and ate his veggies.
Yeah.
His bones are so strong.
So I think I'm the kind of DM that I like a lot of tools to help me do the work. I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff to do. So I'm the kind of DM that has found really good ways to prep and make my prep much less laborious than it could be. And I think the game's still fun. When they turn out, I think they're still fun. I've always worried that they'd feel kind of like robotic and stiff because of that. But that's what the players are for.
To the honesty point, I wanted to mention this made me think of when we did our holiday episode together and your foray as a DM. And when you had Aaron roll to see if he recognized a couple of the characters, like your NPCs, and he rolled poorly, you just sort of chuckling. You're like, you've never seen these guys before. And that was so funny to me. Yeah, it's true. Plays it honest.
I'm also the type of DM. I'm the type of player, and I think we talked about this on the Song of Rex, where I think failures are more fun than successes.
Sometimes, yeah, they are.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Flowerkraut's 1
Yeah.
that she rolled is one of the most memorable parts of the podcast during season 2.
oh, for sure.
Yeah, that was huge.
Yeah. And because I am 1010% in the game as a player or as a DM to have fun. And I am not so invested. Like, if I've written my own campaign, I'm running a campaign out of book right now, but I've run my own campaigns. I'm not so invested in what I wrote that it can't be changed because something funnier or more entertaining comes along.
Right.
And so I really enjoy the aspect of things can go bad, and going bad might actually be better.
It lends to the story sometimes, like all the bad rolls Flowerkraut did against like the millipedes and the other thingies.
This is unacceptable.
Flowerkraut's having a bad day, and the Ettercaps are having revenge on her for making the bubble-butted fly.
You can't assume that your players are not having fun just because of bad rolls. Like, it really can lead to hilarious things happening, and also, being able to translate a bad roll into what the result is. That's another thing, is being quick on your feet as a DM. When someone rolls like a mediocre roll, how do you explain that? How do you flavor text that so that you're like,
right,
you
kind of succeed, but you don't really, those kind of things.
The Edge system, which I can talk about later, but like the FFG/Edge/Star Wars RPG system is very good at giving you the tool set to do that, just in how the dice are created, where it's like you can succeed poorly and you can fail spectacularly.
Yeah.
And there's these weird in-betweens, which I find really fun, just baked in the the dice pool of the system itself.
Not to get too far off, we have a podcast episode coming up that is all about different systems other than the D&D, and that is definitely in one. The thing I like about that system is the dice tell the story and you don't. And that's what's so fun. You roll all these dice and it just tells you what happens based on what comes out. And it is the funniest system I've ever been a part of.
There's no room to fudge rolls as a DM for that system because everyone sees what happens.
Everyone sees what happens, and it can go in the most unexpected ways. That system has open as a player. I can be, especially in Chad's game, I can be somewhat chaotic. And
somewhat.
We can talk about it another time.
Somewhat.
And that it makes it very easy for me to be chaotic when the rolls are completely unpredictable. So I really like that too. Janelle, you mentioned the hangout.
Yeah.
Right, which I think is an important part of D&D. I think it's an important part of tabletop gaming in general, of hanging out together. And Aaron used to host a D&D night every Friday night for how many years?
Oh, like 4 years, I think.
Yeah, we played every night for like 4 years.
Well, I mean,
It was awesome.
that includes that's inclusive of the Earth Dawn campaign and the Tomb of Annihilation game.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And at one point, were there 7 of us?
Yeah.
At one point, there's 7 of us.
You madman.
That's a lot. That's so much.
That's a lot.
This question going to Aaron first, I think makes a lot of sense. Aaron, what kind of strategies did you use to make sure that we were engaged and participating?
So, and I'm not trying to boast when I say this because it's insane to have too many players, but at the same time, wanting to be like inclusive of a lot of your friends that want to play a game and and you're the forever DM in your group of friends, you kind of find yourself in a situation where you just try your best to get everyone together and play a game and you don't want everyone to be bored. There was an Earth Dawn game that I GM'd back my old place, and there's a picture of it somewhere on Facebook. I'd have to show you guys sometime. I may have shown some of you, but you can see me on, it was like a panorama picture. Or like we had some friends over that weren't part of the game, and she took a picture of everyone there in the room. She kind of did a slap together panorama, and I want to say we had 9 players in that game.
Wow.
If you go through the picture, you can count every single person that's sitting there with their character sheet. Now, my best advice for strategies when you got that many players, first piece of advice would be don't do it. It's just way too many players.
And that's the honesty.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yep.
There's the real honesty.
and not just for your sake, because even if you think you're the most amazing DM, you're not the most amazing DM because you're never going to be able to handle the attention span of 9 people. I would say stick to a 4 or 5 person game. Less is even better. I love DMing Break Battle and Roll because we move things so quick and the banter is so fast and you guys are just so on the ball about everything. But what I would do in a big game like that is I would not let anyone sit idle for more than like 10 minutes. I would cut to someone else. I would ask them what they're doing. I would start throwing things at different people that hadn't really been under the spotlight for a bit. And yeah, you're going to have some players that are going to try to snag the spotlight more than others. But that's why you just, as a DM, you push them aside and you put the spotlight back on somebody who's been quiet for a little bit, because it's interesting even for the people who aren't in the spotlight to see something new happen, just to see a new character say what they're going to do. So you're basically just popping between the characters, but you're also trying to move the clock forward, and you're having to also shut people down when they're delaying things too long. I mean, we could go into an entire episode of On Tap where we talk about different types of players, but you all know what I'm talking about. You're going to have the different players that have different focuses in the game. Some of them want to keep the story moving. Some of them want to analyze the littlest details. So, but you have to just like move, they used to call the person who kept the story moving the Rolex award player, because it was the person who's always checking the watch, and looking at it. Anyway, so
how do you elegantly help somebody shut it down, basically?
Depends on the friend group.
That's true. You can literally just interrupt them and say something is happening right now. I mean, that's what I usually would do. It'd be like, or you get that one player who rescues the DM who says, "Hey, I'm going to do this."
Hey, Aaron, you're that guy in my group sometimes.
Aaron is that player.
Yeah.
Aaron knows.
Yep.
He can see it. He can see the struggle in your eyes.
Well, and that's from experience, because I've been in a situation where I need someone to rescue me,
Yeah. Help.
I said it's funny. It depends on the friend group. I'm only running one game right now, but sometimes I run multiple. And the current game I'm running, Chad and Aaron are in, and their spouses. And I got to tell you, with that game, we could play D&D for 20 minutes. We could play D&D for 4 hours, and I'd probably be just as happy. Because I also think that that's one of the important parts of the game is the hangout and just the, hey, no one has any responsibilities right now except to sit at this table and do something fun together. And it could be absolutely rolling a bunch of dice and, fighting a big stalactite monster that throws Chad's little rabbit guy around the room, or it could just be us. That did happen, or it could just be us talking. And so I think it's interesting, because sometimes I am the DM that's just like, whatever happens at the table today is cool, right? Even if it's an hour of us just talking and getting to be in each other's space, which is really fun. And then in other games that I've run, I'm very much like, one of the tactics I used to use in a game that my brother was in is I would just start rolling dice. And every time I'd start rolling dice, like if no one was paying attention, I would make a show of it that I was rolling dice, because I would roll behind a screen. And I'd be like, all right, so what happens? And someone would go, oh, it's my turn. It's my initiative. All right. Oh, that's right. You're right. Correct. It is your turn. Sorry, I was going out of turn.
Create that sense of urgency.
Yeah, create that urgency of well, something's happening. And there's more than one occasion that I did damage to somebody because they didn't realize it was their turn. And I don't feel too bad about that, because, if we're not playing. So I think it does really depend on the friend group. Chad, did you have a thought about this?
Yeah, it's going to be kind of similar, to be honest with you, to a lot of that's already been said. Just there is a struggle with keeping everybody engaged. And I as a DM have, in a way, I have felt that I have failed, players in past games when I was either still learning the system, or I thought I planned out a fun session and it didn't work out the way I had thought it was. So it's something I'm actively always trying to get better at. But what I've learned from those mistakes is, one, to set the vibe early on what kind of session it's going to be. So Janelle mentioned earlier, music, lighting, that sort of thing. So getting them in the mindset of what this game is going to entail early on. And as something that Aaron said is, try your darndest to get everyone, or give everyone, a moment to shine. Now, this doesn't have to be them getting the killing blow on an enemy. This doesn't have them, their characters having some sort of major breakthrough in their backstory, but find, even if it's a little moment, a moment where they can shine as their character, and that they feel that what they are doing and what their choices and actions are is that they matter in this world and have some kind of cause and effect.
I think it's also important to kind of figure out what it is about their character that they enjoy. And when they see the best of that coming out, just kind of let it happen.
Exactly.
Because that's what they're there to do. So I will point out to Chad's wife, our wonderful social media manager, Allie, if Allie smiles at me from across the table, I stop talking.
Oh.
Because her character in our game is the absolute embodiment of chaos and no inhibition, and everything she ever does is the funniest thing that's going to happen at the table that day. So if she gives me a grin from across the table, just stop. And I think it's important to kind of read where your players are at, because just if they get 10 minutes, the last thing that Ali did was so ridiculous, but we've talked about it in our group thread for 2 weeks.
And that's kind of funny too, because we because we have only been doing this D&D podcast long distance, we don't have those visual cues of each other.
Yeah.
And so we have to work with other things. One of my other friends who does long distance podcasts with her friends on the East Coast, she says that her DM like does a warm up question to kind of get everybody like in the mood to play and like set the tone as well. So for example, one of the questions could be like, you're in a haunted house showing your greatest fear. What is your character's greatest fear? And so everyone goes around and answers and you get like a little bit warmed up and ready to play. And that's kind of cool.
That's really cool.
That really brings me back, Janelle, because we used to do that when I was in high school playing a system called Earth Dawn, which we can touch on in a different episode. But we used to literally do acting exercise is what we would start with. Like and this wasn't even my idea. This was like my daddy DM's idea. Like he would do this because that system is so very based on role playing. Like you needed to know how to act to at least a certain level in order to get through that, because there's a lot of skills and a lot of things that were based off of your ability to act. Like one of the things your characters would have traits, and they would have a hidden trait that no one really knew, but the external traits you had to basically express those in your acting. And so he'd do fun stuff like that where it was like, I want everyone to write a letter to another character. You don't know who it's writing it to, but then we had to read the letter in our character's like attitude and voice, stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Super
that's
fun.
Really cool. I love that, and I think what's neat about that is it gets you kind of in your character's mindset. Like it helps ease you in. I know this is something we've talked about in previous Song of Rest, where it's like sometimes you're so nervous to get into the game when you have so much other stuff going on in your life. Like I've jumped into quite a few of these games where things have not been going well outside of the game. And it's like, oh, can I really play Flower Kraut tonight and just be her? And it's like because we chat beforehand and everything, and it's like we ease into it, and it always winds up making me feel better. So doing like a little exercise like that always is a cool way to kind of ease into it.
So Janelle, the next question is for you to start with.
Oh, for me.
So you mentioned that world building is important, and we all know you write and you do a bunch of other things. How do you think, so if you were going to start a campaign, how do you think you would approach world building in your campaign creation?
Well, my experience with world building, apart from like writing fan fiction, but where I'm writing out like an original world, because I've been working with our friend Caitlin, who has like a creature compendium. She's writing a comic right now. So I'm helping her build that world. Apart from just like looking at a lot of research and looking at video games that I've found to be very successful, I look into how to make this world feel real. And I also look at games where I have not felt immersed. One of the big ones for me that I actually thought let me down was Final Fantasy 15. I'm like, why does that one's world building not work? And it's because you go from town to town, and these people wearing casual clothing when there are monsters that could level cities living around them. There's no walls around the cities. There's people just out and about driving, wearing casual clothes, nothing to protect themselves. So then you compare it to other games like Legend of Zelda or Monster Hunter, and you think about ways of how they, like, what is the world they're living in? What is the people's relationship with the monsters? Like, what protections do they have? What's their ecology? Like, what's their commerce? Like, do the animals have byproducts that they use for food? The fruits that grow in the area, things like that. So even if not all these things are used, I do love building out like what their ecology is, what their economy is, what kind of clothing and stuff they would wear, how they would protect themselves from the elements or the monsters that live in their area. And I think that is just a fun way to start with it, because then everything kind of just comes naturally from there once you build like a solid foundation.
That's an amazing answer.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to turn this over to Chad, but I'm actually going to give the complete opposite answer and say the way that I approach my campaign and world building. I got 2 words for you. Bullet points. That is me. I am the most. I'll have like 40 bullet points of cool things that might happen and NPC names and just some ridiculous stuff. And then like story points that I want to hit, all in bullet point format. And then we go. So very, very, very opposite. I love though that you explored your negative influences though as well as your positive ones, because I can say I never do that. If I don't like something, because like Final Fantasy X was really boring, and I agree with you, I don't think about it again, and I think that's cool that you're using that to fuel what you do.
Yeah, it's like, why does that feel wrong? Like, why did this not work out? And it's like, oh, it's the world. It's just like the foundations weren't there. But yeah, no, having bullet points I think is super important. Like a couple characters in mind that you want to show, and then a couple events that you like, options for events, because I know that they don't always come up. Like that's probably one of the sadder things to me is like if a DM plans some encounters that could possibly happen. Like I hear it from my husband all the time. Like, oh yeah, they never made it to that cave where the Kraken was hiding. And I'm just like, oh no, you're planning. So I was like, you worked so hard on that.
Yeah. I looked at my notes for one of my last campaigns that I was running, that I was writing, and I laughed for like 5 minutes because there was just a bullet point in it that said a bear that's also a spider ? Yeah, and Chad and Aaron got to see that monstrosity.
Yeah, we got to fight that.
That
was fun.
And I started.
Ben was in his spider era, where everything was spider or spider adjacent.
That campaign's coming back. Don't you worry.
I'm pretty sure that was all just a bug, Laura.
It wasn't.
Everything's a spider.
I didn't know, actually.
That's a campaign that Dustin could never be a part of.
No, I didn't know that Laura, Aaron's wife, had a spider problem until basically the first session of that campaign, where it was very obvious all the terrible things that were happening. The moon hatched like a giant spider's egg, and spiders poured out of it onto Earth. It was no big deal. It was fine. But Chad,
y'all,
you have written a bunch of original campaigns.
This is true.
How do you approach world building?
I learned this from DMing for Star Wars for a while, because that was kind of my first foray into being a DM, was doing the FFG Edge system. And the reason I bring that up is because when you're talking about a world that exists within a galaxy, and there are multiple planets and multiple ecosystems and political powers and different factions all vying for different things, trying to paint this macro stroke can sometimes feel very foreboding. So when it comes to like doing custom, like original campaigns, what I try to do when thinking of the world is I'll start with a very, very broad macro stroke. What are some of the most important locations? Are there important deities? Are there important factions? Is this like a wartime thing, or is this an era of peace? Like just enough to set the stage and give characters like a reason for, knowing certain things, or if certain things are vitally important. And then after that big, broad macro stroke, micro. And this is why Star Wars comes into play. Like, I don't want to talk about the entirety of the galaxy and every planet that they can go to all at once, because there's no way to plan for that. So let's just focus not just on a planet, not just on like a section of the planet. Let's just focus on this one town, this one little town that is isolated, and it is a small sandbox. So you can flush out that sandbox as much as possible. Really focus on those first sessions for the settings, the hooks, and the quests and whatnot, because your players are often going to create new narratives that you may have not planned for and actually help enrich your environment. So as you start with this little micro and slowly build towards the macro, you now have pillars that are not only of your creation and not just only your player's creation, but even a combination of those two, to then start building out this world in an organic way that makes it feel like everybody had a say, and it feels collaborative and it feels more alive because of that.
That's awesome.
Chad, I love that. And you're making me think of when you're talking about the sandboxes and specifically fleshing out one smaller area. I think that's so important. And it makes me think about Mass Effect, comparing Mass Effect Andromeda, where you have quite a lot of worlds, but they are so empty. They just made these sandboxes that you barely do anything in. But compare it to just one world in the original trilogy. So say Omega, like in Mass Effect 2, where it is so fleshed out and there are multiple missions there that tell you more about the world and the situation and how the people are treated. I think it's so cool to focus on the small, like on like one area and really diving into it. I think that's awesome that you do that.
Feels like you describe the world as super low res, like everything's low res from a distance. But as the players find more interests in one thing or they start heading towards one thing, it starts to render and starts to get more granular. And then you start to insert more and you're like, okay, they decided they want to go this route. This is where I'm going to put my efforts in world building.
Janelle, I don't think there's a question that you couldn't answer with Mass Effect analogies.
This is specifically, I think Mass Effect is what Janelle and I became friends over. So,
or Sonic, might be Sonic.
or yeah, Sonic 2. Mass Effect 2 is like on my top 10, and I don't think it'll ever not be.
It's one of the greatest games ever created. Not a problem. So, Aaron, I'm same question over to you is like how you approach world building, especially because you do it for the podcast. But I think a little bit of a bonus sub question to you is, obviously how do you do the world building, but how do you incorporate like our player backstories into the campaign when you're putting stuff together?
So I would be one of the annoying novelists, I think, if I was ever writing a book, because I have to just sometimes wait for inspiration to even hit me on a lot of things. But when it comes to world building, I think it's very hard to sit down and just punch yourself in the head and make your world fall out. It's like you can't always force.
I love that. Sorry, that's great.
You can't always force, like a really good setting, but I will get small ideas in random moments, like I'm driving, or as most of you probably know, the best place to get ideas is in the shower because you're not thinking about anything else. It's just, oh, holy shit. But of course you have nothing to write on. So you start scribbling on the like steamed up glass wall and, trying to remind yourself. No, but for the podcast, sometimes I become frustrated because I can't always get a good, this is why I try to, I think the way we formatted everything into the arcs works out really well, because those are kind of like my ideas compressed into one section. And what I'll do is if I have a really good idea, really good setting, a really good enemy, a really good like combat or non-combat encounter, I'll try to get it jotted down. It may not be something that's going to happen anytime soon in the podcast, but I'll throw it into the pile of ideas because it might fit to something else. Archipelagia was, I think, something I always wanted to create, and I think it's fun because you can change settings so fast between the islands. It's almost like a space adventure kind of game where you're traveling from planet to planet, like what you guys were just talking about, but instead it's islands, and so it kind of fits into a fantasy setting. Janelle, I think what you said about things that don't immerse you and recognizing those things, that really resonated with me, because whenever I build something, I will sit there and stare at it and try to figure out what the fuck's wrong with it. Because the worst thing that could happen is, you build something that you think is really cool and then someone points out the biggest flaw. And they're like, why would those people not have walls up around their town when there's these monsters outside? And you're like, oh shit, why didn't I think of that? So I do the same thing. I'm like, how does this make sense? How does this work its way into what's happening or into the world that we live in, or that we're adventuring in? I guess the long version of this is that world building is a very long process. Mm-hmm. I think it is very difficult for someone just to sit down and scratch together a world. Archipelagia is not even done. I have notes about different areas, but like it's the whole high res, low res thing. If you guys decided to focus on a place that I have not developed yet. I would have to get cracking real quick on the culture and the people that live there and whatnot. So
I really liked your analogy with the high res and low res. That is perfect.
That's really good.
In explaining that concept. That is going to be that's in the brain vault now. So thank you, sir. I appreciate that metaphor.
Awesome. Well, I think we got time for about 2 more questions. So I want to thank our friend Terp for sending in our listener question of the week. So we'll pull that out of the Ask Cask real quick. So Terp has a question for Aaron. And it is, how do you balance encounters for the podcast, both making it fun for the listener, but not overly complicated for the player?
I'm going to go ahead and just say that sometimes it's pure luck.
Sweet.
Totally fair.
Yeah, I'll admit that I have dabbled with the D&D Beyond encounter builder, which basically you plug in how many players you have, what level they are, and then when you start pulling in creatures from D&D Beyond, it will use their challenge rating to tell you how much you're going to obliterate your party with these monsters. And there are times where I'll put in creatures and it makes it a deadly encounter, and you guys beat the crap out of them. There are times where I put in creatures and it's like a moderate encounter and they give you a lot of trouble. So honestly, you kind of start to be able to eyeball that, I think, especially when you're so used to how fights go, how much damage output the players typically can do. And as you're slowly increasing in level and gear and whatnot, you can start to fine tune a little bit, but sometimes it's just pure luck. Like I there's been a couple times where I thought you guys were going to have a lot more trouble. Gargantuan. I mean, you guys, Caitlin's second monster compendium just came out. The Gargantuan is in there. Look at it. It would have destroyed you guys if
See
Brandy,
what it could have done.
Yes.
Revel in my masterwork.
So yeah, I think that's the best answer I can give, is that sometimes it's luck, but there is a little bit of control you have over and that's what D&D's got challenge ratings for. It's so that the DM can level it out with your players.
That's awesome. All right. We talked about tools a little bit earlier. I did kind of talking about the tools that I use, but Chad, I know you use a lot of different tools to put some stuff together. Aaron just mentioned D&D and Beyond using the encounter builder. What kind of stuff do you use?
Yep, that's totally fair. So D&D Beyond for sure, especially I've had a few people at the table that either have never played D&D before or maybe have only done one session. So having D&D Beyond, especially for character creation, helps move that process, and I think is a really nice way for someone who might not be sure of how point buy works, or how to actually access this part of their character, having that, especially for not only just character creation but leveling up, I think is really, really helpful, because it literally is almost like a video game unlock menu. It's like at level 2, here's all the things you can get. At level 3, here's all the things you can get, and here's your subclasses, and you can add stuff to it depending on which books you have, which I think is hugely helpful. Aaron mentioned their encounter builders. I too have used that, and I too have had the exact same situation where something that was labeled as deadly was taken out in just a few turns, and something that was moderate was the struggle of the evening. So I am totally on that with you in terms of encounters, but I still found it to be relatively easy to use and helpful in just determining volume of enemies and stuff like that. In terms of vibes, Pocket Bard is one of my favorite apps. You can get it on your phone. It allows you to switch between different music. Some of their songs even have vocals now, which is really slick. So if they're in a tavern and
they added caves this week.
Yes, they're always adding new biomes and different settings, and you can switch through them pretty quickly. And what's cool is they have different interpretations of that music. So you could just have this is just when they're in the world, here's when they go into an encounter, here's when they arrive victorious, and there's a meter that goes from 0 to 100, and it the higher it goes, the more accompaniments to the music get added, so it makes the music sound more intense. So you can throttle that up and down as you need to, depending on what's going on in your game. And it has built-in sound effects, which are also super duper cool. I've even used an Elgato Stream Deck and loaded those up with sound effects. So I can just hit a button, like especially for Star Wars, if I needed a blaster or like a lightsaber or something, I would just load those up with sounds. And then speaking of non-D&D games like Star Wars, RPGsessions.com specifically is a app that I believe originally was built for the FFG/Edge system, but they've been adding more and more to it, which specifically I've used it for Star Wars, and it's been amazingly helpful, especially for plotting out all the different NPCs and stuff like that. So I would recommend checking that out if you use any other dice systems.
RPG Sessions is also amazing as a player because there's a lot to remember in Star Wars about how equipment works, especially if you mainly have played D&D games, and it's very different. And RPG Sessions, since we started using it in one of Chad's Star Wars games, I can't imagine going back to like a paper sheet and trying to figure all that out. It's great.
I would definitely like what D&D Beyond kind of does for, 5e and all of that. I think RPG Sessions does for the Edge system, especially helping you visualize character sheets and how the dice work and all that sort of stuff. So I love that to death. And then other tools, visual storytelling aids like set pieces, like miniatures. I mean, I could go on and on about that list forever. Etsy's your best friend in the world when it comes to stuff like that. There's thousands and thousands of awesome creators that build really cool different set pieces, whether they be 3D printed, built out of foam, or like Ben mentioned earlier, if you're just busting out like a dry erase board and you're just drawing it as you go, there's 1,000 different things you can do to help visualize the world in front of you. So yeah, but those, I would say out of all of them, like I think Pocket Bard has been one of my favorite newer tools, just because setting the vibe with music and sound effects I think is so huge, and it's like one of the easiest ways to get people to like start paying attention. Like if you start slowly building up some creepy freaking music, people are gonna start paying attention. If you start ramping up that boss theme, people are gonna turn and actually be like, oh shit, what's happening? Is my character safe? And I'm like, I don't know, let's find that out.
Why have the drums started? No,
I thought we killed everything. Why is the music still going?
Why does it sound like Jumanji's in the house?
Yeah.
What's going on?
The battle music's still playing. Are we not out of combat? We've had that happen, and it's awesome. And it's like, no, you're not. Just it's Pocket Bard is really freaking cool. Aaron, what about you? I know you use a ton of stuff to make notes and build your world and campaign, because I've seen it. Use some other specific tools as well. What else? What do you use?
Kind of piggybacking off of the last question, the planning, preparation, world building. I went OneNote a long time ago, and OneNote has been my bread and butter for any kind of planning, and because you can insert anything into it. Obviously you can put like stats and stuff from other websites. You can just copy paste it over, but I have even recorded like vocal things into my OneNote for NPCs to remind me what I made them sound like, so that whatever.
Oh, that's smart.
That's so smart.
That's
Oh
smart.
my God.
That's amazing.
Oh,
I've been wondering how you keep track of all your voices from week to week. That's so cool. Or not week to week. You know what I mean?
Because I imagine that if like a character ever came back, that I would have to really fast figure out what did they sound like in old episodes and stuff like that. Yeah. So OneNote's fantastic. I use it not even for my personal life for a lot of stuff. But the other tool that, and I'm sure Ben will go into further detail on, is when when COVID hit and we were doing our Friday night Tomb of Annihilation game, we had to go remote, and that we had no choice about that. So I started using Encounter Plus, which is primarily an Apple app. It's on iPad and it's on Mac. I don't know if they ever released it for Android and PC or whatnot.
Still have not.
And it was fine because we didn't necessarily need everyone to have an Apple device in order to use it. What I would do is we would be on Discord, and I would have 2 instances of myself in a channel. One of them, I named him DM Assistant. DM Assistant would feed the screen of Encounter Plus while I would have like, and also I think DM Assistant would also funneling the music, because like with Pocket Bard kind of stuff, I wasn't using Pocket Bard, which I love Pocket Bard, by the way. I would love to use that in other games. I was actually just funneling Spotify music and whatnot into the Discord channel. So Encounter Plus is a tabletop simulating application that you can insert any image as a map, and then you can overlay a grid on top of it, and then you can insert tokens for all your characters. It has animations. You can make it raining. You can make it foggy.
Doesn't it have a built-in like fog of war? So
yes,
the icons can actively reveal something. That's so cool.
Yeah, so you can either manually reveal areas with the fog of war, or what I was doing, which takes a lot more work, is you can draw the actual physical walls that exist on your map, and then enable the line of sight ability so that your player characters, when they move, based on where the walls are, and also based on what race they were, and if they had dark vision or not, you had all these different things. It would that character would then see on the map what they actually could see.
I totally want to interject because we were talking about the vibes of a session, right? And I'll tell you what, the visual aids and the way that you described using that would make the way people play entirely different. Like if it was theater of the mind, that's one thing, but if they can see that there's just this giant room or this series of rooms that are all blacked out, do you think people are going to think a little bit more when they're like, I move 2 steps forward?
Absolutely.
They'd be like, no, I run down the hall, like just that alone. If you were just doing like a dungeon crawl or like a horror, I think that alone would immediately shift the tone and make people like a little more, weary of making big moves. And that could totally make the session feel completely different, which I think is really cool.
So that was exactly how it ended up going with Tomb of Annihilation, because everyone inched forward. And, the thing is, you can configure Encounter Plus so that everyone can log into a web portal and move their own characters. But the way we had it set up was that I was in full control and people just told me where their character was going to move, so that we didn't have people like, especially with the line of sight open, people weren't just moving their character willy-nilly and looking around corners, even though it wasn't their turn, I wanted to compare this, as I was talking about Encounter Plus, with Roll20. So I know a lot of you listeners have probably used Roll20, and I wanted to give a quick comparison, or my opinion, between that and Encounter Plus. Roll20 gets the job done. I don't think Roll20 is amazing. I think it could use a lot of updates. Encounter Plus takes all the good things from Roll20 and makes them look amazing. It adds animations. You could like literally put like a burning fire on top, just into your map, with like the fog like rolling across the map. So it kind of gives this.
Man, that's so cool. Why does it got to be Apple locked? Man.
Well, you got iPads in your house.
That's very cool.
Don't make me. I don't wanna.
So yeah, that would be my set of tools. It's mostly OneNote, Encounter Plus, and then on occasion, especially if you're playing a live game, I like to make little props that you can hand players. I like making like notes that you can make them look like parchment. Those are fun.
I bought a wax seal kit at one point to make letters and like do things. Yeah, just to have fun with it.
I love that.
The seal was part of a puzzle, like whose it was and everything as well, which was really fun. I want to say that I use Encounters Plus as well. It is transformed prep for me. And, it's something like $20 for a year, and it's absolutely unbelievably worth it. The coolest part of it is like, so one of the campaigns I'm running is actually directly out of the book right now. And I went to basically every encounter that we could probably get into for the next 6 or 7 sessions. And I built them in Encounters Plus, and I named them. It gave them specific names. And when the encounter starts, all I have to do is I hit load encounter with the name on it, and then everything's placed on the map where I set it.
That's a great idea.
And it's super, super incredible how easy it is. I didn't do the draw on the walls and like the vision thing that Aaron's done, for the sole reason that I don't have an Apple Pencil. and doing it by hand with like your finger really sucks, but it gives you more options. Like I can actually just do a fog of war. And so when characters move into a space, I get to choose what they do and do not see, just with a quick swipe. Oh, so I think that's a way to say that the tool is as much or as little as you want it to be, right? Which is why I love it so much, because I load in my maps. I can align the maps to a grid. Sometimes they work. That's more the maps problem than the tools problem with the maps that I was just using. I can load in, like I said, all my encounters. And the greatest part is like, if I've got a goblin, right, it shows me on my screen. So what I see on my screen is different than what the players see. I see all sorts of cool stuff, but it's going out to a second screen. So I click on the goblin, I see that goblin stat sheet. And anything where it might say like on attack roll, D20 plus 4, that's underlined because it's a link. And I just press it and the roll happens.
Yeah, the physical dice roll over.
The physical dice roll, and it rolls on, like I said, I roll it on screen. And so everyone can see the hit, right, or miss. And then they're right there. It says, on hit, it's, 2d10 plus 4. It's the strongest goblin ever, but 2d10 plus 4, and then it rolls. And so, everyone at the table all of a sudden just goes, 16 damage, right? Like I don't have to announce it out. It takes a ton of the work off of me. And it integrates so well with other things. Like I can, if I've got a spider, right? And it's got no icon that you can slide around the screen.
A spider bear, if you will.
Spider bear.
Mm-hmm.
I can put it side by side with Google and go into Google Images and type in spider bear. And then, so cool, there's a good spider bear. I could slide that image over the stat sheet and it just pulls it in. And now that's the icon. That's the token that you see on the screen. And it makes it like, this is usually a negative word, but in this way it's positive. It's thoughtless. Right? You just really don't have to think about it. You just have to go through the motions of getting everything kind of set up rather than being like, all right, cool. How am I going to get this map on the table? How am I going to draw this with Sharpie? Like all that kind of stuff. Encounters Plus is, unless I became super rich and was able to have every single mini and every single like thing on the planet, because I do love miniature stuff. Unless I was able to do that, Encounters Plus is like the only way that I would run a game anymore. It makes it so much fun.
That's awesome.
All right, folks, we got time for one last question. Everyone good for one more? Yeah, it's closing time.
Can I get one refill?
Yeah. Barkeep.
Oh, of course. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Got to find another pumpkin. God damn it.
I know they're super in season right now. It's very popular. I'm so sorry.
Yes, they're free roaming pumpkins.
I'm a basic bitch. I love my pumpkin spice.
Oh, nothing better than a pumpkin chai.
I had one this morning. They've Starbucks has it back on the menu, the chai with the pumpkin spice cream on top.
Yeah, you used to have to custom order that stuff, but man.
Yeah, they figured it out.
Up in Flagstaff, there's an amazing pumpkin chai up there from, I think it's Steep. It's so good.
Love it.
Okay, Janelle, I'll aim the question to you, and you'll probably have to answer from a break battle roll perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Can you share one of your favorite moments from any campaign that you've played in?
Oh, okay. Let's see. Yeah, there was actually a campaign that I was recently part of, hosted by my friend Owen, who listens to the podcast. So hi, Owen. Hope you're enjoying.
Hi, Owen.
So Owen ran a one-shot campaign recently, and my husband Joe got to take part of it. Caitlin got to take part of it, and our friend Aaron got to take part of it. And he does some very funny like mystery one-shots. They're just a blast. They're primarily role play heavy. But yeah, there was a part in his campaign where he had basically a character that was a songstress that was supposed to be entertaining a crowd kind of at a carnival. So you can imagine like the Baldur's Gate carnival or something like that. Only she was like supposed to be like this mermaid lady and out in the middle of a lake trying to sing a song. And someone in the crowd kept booing her. And it was like basically our mission to make sure that the mood of the like carnival wasn't going down. So all these terrible things were happening. So booing, the songstress while low stakes is just like, we're like, where's this guy? Let's like, and so my character, who is a monk, like tackles this person and causes a huge disruption. And Joe, who plays a wizard who likes to levitate around, decided to perform with the mermaid lady because like a spotlight was on my character, and so he steps into the spotlight and starts singing and like floats over to the mermaid and starts doing a duet with her, and it was just so great. And he says like as he's floating he like steps on somebody's face to like give himself a little push out into the lake. It's just like, oh my god. Oh, it's so funny. It's just, it was great. It was role play heavy. Caitlin's character apparently had no sense of direction. She was like at the lost and found. And so Aaron had to go get her. It was just a good time. That was probably one of the funniest moments was Joe on cue, like singing a random song, like, your song of the sea entices me, and he like kicks someone in the face and flies over to a mermaid. It's just so ridiculous.
That's what role playing's for. Yes.
Chad, tell us about a moment from one of your games.
Oh boy, there's a couple, and that's why it's hard. I'm gonna share some micro moments if that's okay, because I find them to be my favorites for different reasons.
Rapid fire.
So one of them, Aaron was a part of. It was a Star Wars game. It was a situation where everybody had fallen into a trap and they were put into an arena. Their weapons were stripped. All of their like special abilities were taken away from them. And when they got into the arena, they saw that their weapons and stuff were on top of these pillars. And on the other side of the arena opened up a gate, and it was, classic Star Wars. You got to throw a Rancor in there. Dustin's character his name was Malarkey. He was a Wookiee, which was phenomenal.
My gosh.
Dustin's character had managed to craft a shiv while they were in prison,
using a force field.
Just like we kind of made the joke that like it was just melting it because he was forcing it into this force field, and managed to, in the way that you can in the Star Wars dice set, crit on the Rancor with a shiv and do the dumbest amount of damage, which was so funny. Basically, he was 1v1ing this thing while everybody else was scrambling to try and get their weapons, which was super duper fun. Aaron's character, who was a droid smith, had two droids that he had fashioned, and I think you managed to get to them, and you activated them, and your character was Kermit-esque, which was fantastic. So these two little droids were the old men that were constantly booing the audience.
Statler and
Waldorf, right?
Waldorf, yeah.
Yeah, and I felt so bad because Aaron like sends them over to the Rancor, and the Rancor's got multi-hit. So he took out these drones in one slice.
Oh, no.
Meanwhile, this Wookiee's still going at his legs with this freaking shiv, and I can't manage to land a hit on this giant Wookiee. So that was a fun moment just for the sheer hilarity of it.
I love it.
Another moment, same game, different session, same game. When we were talking about that you can't always plan for things, well, these group of knuckleheads decided to derail the entire campaign for a session, basically stopping at the equivalent of a Star Wars gas station to fill up their ship because they were out of fuel. And that became the entire session. Just how much they could get away with, like how much they could screw over every single person on that space station, and the main guy there that was actually just genuinely trying to help them.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the whole session. Like literally was just them creating chaos on this little space station and stealing everything in sight, which was really, really funny. So, you make those sessions where you could either get through pages of what you have written, or you get through a sentence, and the role playing takes over the rest. And then the last one, and this is just because of compare and contrast. So I'm running the same game with two different groups, and one of my favorite things is just, given the same circumstances, given the same settings, the same NPCs and all of that, how vastly different both groups have gone. And just the comparing and contrasting and seeing what different people do in the same settings, I think is really, really fun and interesting. And it's also helped me build some more background and some more lore because they've created stuff in one session that I'm like, oh, the other group would totally love this. I'm going to add it in there. So it's just that's been fun. And if we go into break, battle, and roll, there's way too many moments that are like the funniest things that's ever happened. I still, if I have to pick one, if you literally yelled at me and say, pick your favorite thing that's ever happened in this podcast, I would genuinely tell you everything in the Crextivus ballad is my favorite thing in this podcast.
Oh, that's so good.
And I'm so sorry that was a long answer, but I just had to share some of those moments.
Do you mind if I jump back
please.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to say there was another part of your question, like what made it special, which I think it just harkens to the entire this topic, which is the DM made it special because he didn't just move on from this. It's like he incorporated basically all of our ridiculous shenanigans through the end of the game. He made it so that this mermaid lady had a boyfriend that was very annoyed at Joe's character and was eyeing him suspiciously. He made Joe basically the prince of the carnival or whatever. It was just because he entertained the audience so much. He just goes along with our stuff and just amplifies it and just makes it even funnier. And
fun.
I mean, we see that a lot in Break, Battle, and Roll, with Jive Horse again.
Oh my
something
gosh,
that was
Jive
never
Horse
meant to be
being a one
touched
bit
as a
becoming
character.
Such an important character for us.
He was so, I know, having a whole Christmas episode dedicated to
When
Jive
a
Horse.
one-bit character becomes a t-shirt, you know you've done something right.
All you did was put headphones on a horse to calm it down, and then it became a thing. And Aaron was like, you know what? It's a character now. And I love that. I love that you didn't just move on from that. You're like, you know what? This random bullshit is now part of the story. You're welcome.
So there's a thing for a lot of DMs, and I think you guys will all agree, where there is going to be, it's almost a constant in every campaign I've ever run. There is going to be either an NPC you planned or an NPC you didn't plan that the party's going to fall in love with, and it is going to become a thing, and you're just going to have to go with it.
Yeah, in the current game you guys are playing in, you've got a little kobold friend that was supposed to die within the first 3 paragraphs of you meeting him, and you saved his life and you brought him with you. It's totally fine. I just got to keep doing that kobold voice for Meepo.
That's absolutely a D&D trope is the players falling in love with the random NPC and now he's part of the party.
Meepo love you too.
And if he dies, the world will burn.
The world will end. There's an NPC. So Aaron's in the second group that I'm running for this same campaign. And there's literally an important NPC that was only developed because the other group saved his life and decided, no, this isn't an enemy, this is a friend. And I'm like, that's so much more fun. So that I was like, I presented the same opportunity, but crafted it a little bit differently to you could still choose to kill this guy if you want to, but there's a better option for him to be a friend. And some things you just don't plan on. Literally right now, they've been carrying around a goblin who was just supposed to die. And now I have to deal with, they're like, who's this goblin? Your name. And I'm like, I'm Freck the goblin. And they're like, we love you, Freck. And then my paladin's like, you're going to be my squire. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm not ready for Freck the goblin to go fight the BBG at the end of this session.
It's like Marv. It's like what happened with Marv in the
Marv is
my
the
God,
perfect
Marv.
example. Marv is the golden example.
That was great.
You're so funny, Flower Girl. I love you.
Aaron, hit me with some memories.
Yes.
Okay. So this, I would say, is memorable. I in answering this question, I'm just trying to think of moments that stuck with me, that regardless of how long it's been, I still look back to them. Not necessarily because they were the most amazing thing or they were the most funny thing. It was just this stuck with me because the players were so thrown for a loop on what was really happening around them. So the crux of it is that the party is working for this dude who, well, they're not working for him. They run into him. He kind of becomes a little bit more involved in their mission. I'm skipping a lot of details because it's not important. He's this obsidian guy in For Birth Down, which are basically people made of rock. And he's really rich and he's like a noble. And immediately everyone friggin' hates this guy. Like, because he's rich and he's got influence, they hate him. But he keeps saying, okay, this is what's going to happen next. You guys need to go do this. And one of the players in specific was like, guys, we cannot trust this guy. We can't keep doing what he wants us to do because it's going to lead to him just absolutely stabbing us in the back. He goes in and he literally presents to the rest of the group the strings running from this side of the wall to this side with this picture here. He's like, he constructs this entire theory as to why this guy is bad. And I'm loving this because they have no freaking clue that this guy is genuine, absolutely genuine. And so they get to this big boss fight and the boss is about to like take out someone and this guy runs in and saves them and sacrifices himself.
Gives a wink to the guy that questioned him the whole time. This one's for you.
This
you never believed in me, but I always believed in you.
Like that, and it was so funny because of course they're like, you were gonna backstab us, but you decided to make him good. I'm like, no, dude, from the beginning this guy was genuine, and it was just so funny to look because he had convinced everybody. This player had convinced everybody that they were gonna wait for the right opportunity to confront him and do whatever, and it just turned out that way. So I love hearing players like talk about how they perceive the situation, and they're like, what do you guys think, blah 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 blah, and so you're like, oh, this is great because now I've got them thinking about it. Now I've got them second guessing. Oh, now they're really doubting this whole thing. You're just like, oh, that's what I love from my games.
Awesome.
And then Ben, how about yours?
So I'm gonna do the Chad rapid fire thing because I think it's really fun. I'm going to start with, I've got two that are recent and one that's a little bit older. One that's recent that no one will let this get ever forgotten at our game table currently is when Chad's wife's character tried to open up an unlocked chest with a rock because she just assumed it was
she
locked.
Plays a wild druid child.
And rolled a 1 and broke all the potions inside, which is never not funny. And then she looks at me, she's like, well, now can I try to lockpick it? I'm like, it's not locked. You never tried. I found a chest. I hit it with a rock. That was as fast. I was like, cool. We could do that. The one of the others is an Aaron's Tomb of Annihilation game. Spoilers for anybody, but when you find certain treasures in the dungeon and you put them on, they're both they have a benefit and a curse to them. And I ended up with a bracer that gave me a lot more strength, and I was already a fighter with a ton of strength. And Aaron, the second I said, okay, I'll put that on, he goes, really? So 5 minutes later, 5 minutes later, after Aaron's already gone, like, oh no, now, like, I had something ridiculous, like a plus 14 to hit because of this. It was real. It was real insane. 5 minutes later, we're walking down a hallway and there's a tapestry. And the tapestry had like fear on it or something, Aaron, like if you looked at it. And I looked at it and I completely failed my check. And what it makes you do is it's in a room with a bunch of like trophies, like, like animal heads mounted on the wall. And one of them was a giant boar's head with giant teeth. And it makes you go stick your head in it so it can bite your head off. And Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, if my head goes in it, that's instant death, right? You're done. Yes. And I fail. And they are all my entire party's trying to stop me. And how do they have to stop me? Strength checks.
This sounds like Aaron, a Timothy and Thrigg situation. Thrigg, well, I'm just on your leg now. Okay.
Aaron made me roll my own strength checks, which was the best part.
God.
And I'm sitting there rolling. They're like, does an 18? I'm like, all right. And Aaron's like, make your strength checks. Like, I rolled a 34. Like, it was so bad. I didn't die. It eventually worked out. I don't know if Aaron saved me or not, but it was pretty amazing watching this whole room of people panic of like, are we gonna actually have a death? Because it really did seem that way. It seemed inevitable.
That is amazing. Unintended consequences. I'm sorry. I love that.
In case people don't know, like in Tomb of Annihilation, you're kind of set up
Someone's dying. Someone's dying.
right? Yeah.
That is as brutal gets.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the setting behind Tomb of Annihilation is that resurrection magic doesn't work. So if someone's dead, they're dead.
They're dead. They are dead. My last one, which is awesome from my recent game, from part of it, was these knuckleheads walked across a puzzle. I'm talking Chad, Aaron, Laura, and Allie, where there were three globes.
No, this is too embarrassing. No, don't do it.
Oh my gosh, I need to know. I need to know.
And they failed their checks. And so music starts playing. And I can't remember what the effect was that happens to them. But while the music starts playing, like something's like they're slowed and I'm rolling to see if it's alerting creatures in another room to come to them. The solution to this puzzle is to take them out of the room. Whenever you could pick up the globes, and if you take them out of the room, the second they get out of the room, they stop making sound. So of course, the first thing that they try to do is break them. Can't break them.
Oh, okay.
They try multiple times. And then somebody says, I'm just going to run with it. Pick it up and run with it. They get out of the room. It stops making noise. And then someone says, okay, let's break the other two. And they spend another 6 minutes of like in-game time trying to break these things, failing, getting hurt, like all this stuff. And then finally he says, well, let's just take them out of the room. And it worked. Like, that's all
the entire time, Ben's rolling for detection to see if any creature hears this.
We literally
nothing.
have
Nothing.
the equivalent of D&D rock band going on in this room.
Yeah.
Full blast.
And again, I don't fake my rolls, right? So I just keep, and I'm rolling on the screen. They're like, "What are you rolling for?" I'm like, don't worry about it. But it kept on going my way, which was hysterical because basically it went on so long that the whole dungeon probably could have been alerted.
Oh my gosh!
But it's like, oh, got out of the room. What happened? Like, it stopped making noise. Great, let's break the other ones.
Oh my gosh!
Now I have it in for these
the
orbs.
Solution. You have the solution. And it was just so funny and amazing. And I'm just sitting the whole time trying not to laugh because I know if I laugh, they're going to be like, oh, he's laughing at us because we already figured it out. And I was like, no, I just want to watch this for another 10 minutes because it's hysterical. But that's one of my favorite moments that's happened ever in a game. Well, guys, thank you. I think this, as an inaugural episode, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's great. Thank you.
I'm clapping in the
Thank
microphone. It might get edited out. I don't know yet. Clap, 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 clap.
Yay.
Thank you all for joining us. Please and stay and listen to our sponsors and our credits because there are great ways for you to get in touch with us through Instagram and other different ways to send your questions in because we would rather hear what you want to talk about and answer questions from you. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
And thank you to Terp for submitting his question for this episode.
Thank you, Terp.
And thank you, Terp.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And it's closing time. So cheers. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See ya.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.
Hey, thank you for turning into another episode of On Tap. We hope you enjoyed the conversation greatly and found some nuggets of wisdom to take away. Don't forget, you can follow us on our social media channels and get a lot more updates and behind-the-scenes content. You can find us on Instagram at breakbattleroll. You can find us on Blue Sky at breakbattleroll.bsky.social. You can also find us on TikTok at breakbattleroll_. _. We love hearing from our listeners. So please feel free, share your thoughts, your feedback, or just come by and say hi. Until next time, play your TTRPGs responsibly.